Activation and discretion warning. This episode contains explicit and graphic descriptions of adult content situations, including sexual assault and rape. Discretionary caution and action is required. This episode is not for children. Please use extreme self-care in listening to this episode and seek immediate help. If you are activated and need help from the National Sexual Assault Telephone Hotline, call 1-800-656-HOPE. That's 1-800-656-4673.
I always say there was never a time that I would have thought, I bet he's drugging and raping me. I must have just done something wrong, or I ate something bad. I worked out too much. There's 1,000,001 things that I would have said before I ever even thought that that's what was happening. But that was what was happening. And there's two components of that. Not only do I hear from survivors, I hear from therapists and psychiatrists and counselors who say, oh my goodness, I've had patients like you.
Welcome, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SASS podcast, coming to you from the Podvlog studio in St. George, Utah, and produced by Markel Consulting, LLC. I'm your host, Dave Markel. Hey everybody, I've got Carolyn Markel with me today. Before I go any further, I just want to give a huge shout out for Safe in Harm's Way and Carolyn. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for being with me, and tell everybody what Safe in Harm's Way is and why it is that you and I are doing a monthly podcast together.
Well, first of all, we're doing a monthly podcast together because I think what you and I bring to the table is a level of expertise and intelligence. And I'm owning that because those two words have been hard fought and won for, and we do it consistently. We also do it with empathy, and we also do it with a great deal of care for each other and for the lives we impact. So the fact that you and I get to do this as a regular every month just brings fuel to my soul. And I thank you for that open invitation and bringing me along for the ride on the SASS podcast.
That's exactly right. I love the way you described how it is that we're doing a monthly podcast together. It's more of an honor to me than it is maybe to you.
It's an equal honor of marching band and fireworks level of appreciation and deep, deep love. So Thank you. So safeandharmsway.org is the answer to the current problems within the arena of domestic violence. Every month, 300,000 people look for services related to domestic violence, and there is no room at the inn. And while shelters do fabulous, incredible work, they cannot house the people that need the help. There has to be an answer. Biden's Office of Gender Policy has called out several big things related to violence against women. One of them is to have more research, more services, more action in an online format. Safe in Harm's Way, we are starting year 8. Actually, today is the 8-year anniversary.
Happy birthday and congratulations. It's awesome.
March 23rd. Yes. And so when I founded this, it was an answer to knowing that there was no room at the inn. So I'll give you an example. This was the day 8 years ago that I escaped from my fiancé just 4 weeks before our planned and paid for wedding. At the time, I was in pharmaceutical sales. I had a high 6-figure paying job. I had a company car. I had a credit card. I owned my own home, all of these things. And when I escaped him, in the best planning, it took me about 10 days to comprise an exit strategy. It took me about 7 months to fully implement my plan. I still ended up living out of my car because I thought, well, I'll just go to a shelter. Nope, no place. Now, you can use shelter services and not live there, which I did, but I didn't have a place to live. I thought, okay, well, now I'll just go get an apartment. No, there's 6 to 8 weeks wait time in any area in which I lived to find a place. So I knew then as I started to craft things for an organization I wanted to found that we would be all online, that we call it Safe in Harm's Way. We call it those quiet 3 a.m. moments when maybe you're barricading yourself in the bathroom while the rampage goes on in your living room. And it might be the only time at 3 a.m. that you can go online and look for help and services. So we offer every way to heal online through Safe in Harm's Way. We have partners So at this point, we are in 9 states as the sole resource provider for shelters because they are strapped to capacity, even in the offering of healing services. So we have arranged partnerships to bring our services and how we approach. We work really hard on awareness and action campaigns to meet the unique needs of people who have been historically marginalized based on the biggest disparities of transportation, economics, mobility, and access to care. Everything is targeted on those 4 pillars to make sure that unique solutions can be brought to individuals as survivors quickly, easily, and in their own time frame so that they're not waiting to get a bed, but rather trying to navigate that exit plan from home.
I love it. And I think what you are doing is phenomenally important and accomplishing much in the lives of people who are utilizing Safe in Harm's Way. But I also want to explain that I've had you on the show. The reason I had Carolyn the first time is because her story isn't just an issue of domestic violence, which of course it is. That's the underlying aspect of what happened. But it was a sexual assault enterprise that your fiancé was utilizing and assaulting you without your knowledge for the longest time, using drugs. And it was that sexual assault aspect that drew me to reach out to you in the first place. But I think what's important to emphasize here is that so often the sexual assault and rape aspect of a relationship is part of domestic violence. It's more prevalent than most people realize. Thank you so much for being so transparent and open and willing to talk about all of this, and for explaining Safe in Harm's Way in so much better of a way than I could have. It was so excellent.
That's a hard fought rebranding to get the messaging down. Because within the domestic violence advocacy arena, there are so many tentacles that we have to try to cut off from the giant squid that it is. If I start listing all those things, it'd be a long time. So we have to really group it into where are we playing at and in what ways, and then what's our mission and values to do that. So that's been a really big challenge to get into a few words that what we do is comprised of so much. So I appreciate you saying that about Safe in Harm's Way. And I also appreciate you giving the context to the story that I choose to be transparent about. One of the things I'd like to talk about, there is a great webinar that domesticshelters.org did. It was done on November 11th of 2021. That webinar specifically targeted the use of drugs as a way to abuse, demean, and compromise people. The thing I want people to be aware of as it relates to that particular brand of domestic abuse is that most people chalk that up, whether it's you don't want to have sex, but you just want to get it over with, because if you complain, it's going to be a fight. That's sexual coercion, and that's also akin to rape.
Absolutely.
If it's drugs being put into your drink or to whatever food you're eating, there is not a time that I do a podcast or I speak in front of people that there aren't multiple folks either waiting in my email inbox, or if I'm doing a speaking event, a line out the door to say, oh my gosh, I've woken up before bleeding from my rectum. Didn't know why that was. I've woken up before battered and bruised around my vaginal area. I don't know what that was about. I always say there was never a time that I would have thought, I bet he's drugging and raping me. I must have just done something wrong, or I ate something bad. I worked out too much. There's a million and one things that I would have said before I ever even thought that that's what was happening.
Yeah.
But that was what was happening. And there's 2 components of that. Not only do I hear from survivors, I hear from therapists and psychiatrists and counselors who say, oh my goodness, I've had patients like you. I thought they were delusional. I treated them as if they were delusional. And I did a podcast once with a licensed therapist, and she said, Carolyn, had you actually thought those things and approached someone, you probably would have ended up in a 3-day psych hold and medicated to the max, because no one understands that as a real thing, and it is a real thing. The man I escaped from belonged to a group that taught other men how to drug and incapacitate their partners and then host parties where people would come over and their significant other would be raped and filmed. He belonged to a group. Let me pause a minute and allow everybody to comprehend that. There is a group of men in Kansas City, Missouri, that together discussed how to drug and rape the people they loved and film it. That's what he belonged to.
I'm going to bet that's still happening.
For sure. It's horrific. Some of the things I know now that I didn't know then. There were multiple times of going out on dates that I would have one drink and be unable to walk out of the restaurant. And I thought, again, maybe I didn't eat a lot that day. Maybe I worked out too hard that day. No, those were the times he was experimenting on how much to drug me. There were times at parties that I had to be carried out by other people at the party when I only had one drink. He was experimenting to see what level my body would tolerate and when I would be sufficiently drugged not to know. And of course, it gave him an alibi, right? Well, Carolyn just drinks too much. You know, she's crazy. This is what I have to deal with, which then would only paint me in the bad light should it ever come out that I actually raised my hand and said, you know, I think he's drugging me. So if that happens to you, put that on your radar. I traveled a lot for work. There were times people would approach me at the bar, like really hitting on me. And I'm used to that. Usually when I say, hey, not interested, and people leave me alone, I'm good all day, right? That's fine. These were people that would not leave me alone. I had a couple occasions, bartenders noticed that they tried to put something in my drink. On those occasions, when they just kept at it, and I was like, no, I'd have to call security. I remember one instance at a hotel where there was two of them. And one guy said to the other, obviously, she's not interested in what we were promised. Now, I would never have thought that the man who claimed to love me, who was at home in our house, who knew where I would be having dinner that night, would get online and promise me to people and tell them how to drug me. I didn't know that the man who claimed to love me, shared a home with me, would also just blanketly put out where I was going to be when I traveled to other groups to see what could be done to me. I didn't know that that man, when I got home from traveling for work, and would say, you know what, love, you've been working so hard. Pick out your best dress, get dressed. I'm taking you out to our favorite steak dinner. We're going to have a great time tonight. I didn't know that he actually would encourage 4 to 5 different men to come to that restaurant at the time we were going to be there so that he could check me out. All of those emails to those men started off with, my girlfriend has no idea that I'm doing this to her, and ended with, I will facilitate what can be done to her. I didn't know that there were men stationed around this restaurant. Didn't know that. So those are all things I found out, which caused me to plan my escape. But it's also the look back that is provided now that I'm armed with all that information of what he was doing. Oh, well, this time and this time. You know what else I know? All the times he traveled for work. That fellow coworkers in an industry that's pretty specific couldn't get out of bed the next morning. And he was the last one to have seen them. Had to leave meetings because something was horribly, horribly wrong with them. And he was the last one to see him. It's not that he just did this to me. I found evidence of a lot of people that he did this to.
I just can't hammer home enough how plausible this is and how frequent, prevalent, and disastrous this is. A lot of people go, well, how can an adult be trafficked? There's one way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways, but that's a very specific and prevalent way. Absolutely.
Yes. For sure. To be honest, I have to think about how I would have approached somebody had they come to me. Would have thought they were crazy. I'm aligned, and I know you are too, Dave, with End Violence Against Women International, EVAWI. We're going to be attending their conference in the next few weeks.
Yep.
Their main hashtag is start by believing. I cannot emphasize that enough. When someone comes to you and says, this is what's happening to me, you start by believing. And that carries the day. And if I can hammer home not only this experience, but for anybody else who's wondering throughout their life, you know, something happened to me, but I'm not quite sure what that is. You're not alone. There is help to be had. You can own your sexuality again. It was very, very important for me to do the hard work to own my sexuality again. You can find a way to get back into enjoying sex with the right partner. You can honor your body, and it's hard work to heal, but it can be done because that son of a bitch is not taking that away from me. And that's hard work, but it can be done. And so there are very many resources of people doing this hard work. And if you find a therapist that says, I think you're delusional, you're just not at the right therapist.
That's right.
I was very fortunate in the therapist that I chose that man did not say to me, Carolyn, there's no way. He said, let's solve this together.
That's a really strong point, Carolyn. If you don't feel comfortable with your therapist, change therapists. Keep shopping for the therapist that works for you, that not only specializes in sexual assault and sexuality issues, but also who is trauma informed. I think that's a huge aspect. And that's what I love about Safe in Harm's Way. It is such a trauma informed organization.
It is. That's something I went back to school for. It's something that when we're talking to people and we're working with volunteers that we teach as well, because we never know who might be the person that they talk to. Maybe they are a big proponent of Safe in Harm's Way. Maybe they post about it on social media. We work with people. We have an entire private Facebook group where we talk about that, because if somebody you know and love comes to you and shares something, we want the response to be trauma informed. We want that response to be, let me put you in touch with the right people. I believe you. I'm here to support you. And so that's what we talk about and that we teach.
Well, you just mentioned two things then that I emphasize every single episode, and that is start by believing and become as trauma informed as you possibly can. There's so much to learn about the neuroscience of trauma, how humans' brains function, and what the correlation is between what your brain is doing and how your mind interprets what your brain is doing. Because that's two different things. You think with your mind, but your brain controls things like the trauma response and the fear cascade, how fast your heart is beating and what your blood pressure is. You can't control those things. But then when our body reacts a certain way to trauma, as it's happening, or even memory of trauma, if we don't understand what our body is doing and reacting to, it's so helpful to get as much education in the trauma-informed aspect of the neuroscience of trauma and the neuroscience of trauma memory, how we remember things, but also to keep in mind that if this is happening to you, it's also happening to someone else. I end every episode with, remember, do your part to help bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. And the best way to do that is to start by believing.
Yes. The way that we have grown at Safe in Harm's Way is to really look at it now as 4 pillars of help. The 4th pillar that we've started doing in the past year is to really talk to friends, family, and coworkers, advocates, judges, prosecutors, police, to teach and talk about how somebody shows up. I've had very, very close family, people who should love me, say that my healing journey doesn't make sense to them because why can't I just get over it? So we talk about, again, safeinharmsway.org is built from the experiences, the good things that happened to me, and there were many. And then the not so good things that happened to me, which is 8 years of healing and having family say, why are you still upset about this? Why do you still have moments where you're upset about this? Why is it that you act sometimes the way you do?
Yeah. Why did it take you 3 days to get out of bed after watching a webinar?
Right. So we've really bulked up that 4th pillar because we can do everything in our best power and ability. And our data and statistics, we are stellar. If we don't get friends, family, and coworkers to lean in, and we're not asking a lot, we're asking you to have 3 sentences that you basically live by. I believe you. I may not understand your journey, but how can I support you? And what can I do to further help you in this journey? And let me add one thing. I'm working it more into the rotation and not, you know what? I told you to leave him a long time ago. I told you I didn't like him. Why did you stay? If we don't get friends, family, and coworkers to get the minimum of a trauma-informed response, we lose. We lose people to silence and shame. Silence and shame is deadly. We lose very capable people who are stellar to start to consider, you know what, maybe if I wasn't alive, this would be a whole lot easier. If I could take those people by the hand and say, you are destined on this earth for greatness in whatever capacity you choose to pursue. You should be alive on this earth. Your story matters. When you share your story, you lessen the shame and the silence for other people. And when you relieve that shame and silence from your own body and soul, you bring an entirely new fuel to the equation. Stay around. Stay around. Tomorrow will be better.
Such great wisdom that you're imparting. I am thankful that you were saying those things because of what I just told you. I said at the end of every episode, to start by believing is that other sentence that I tag onto that, because we all know someone whose life has been impacted by rape or sexual assault.
Yes.
It's so prevalent that that statement is 100% true. You may not know that you know somebody who's been raped or sexually assaulted, but it is so prevalent that yes, you do know someone who has been raped or sexual assault. So start by believing, and being trauma informed in the ways that we talked about can be that foundation for starting better conversations with the 4 pillars you've just mentioned. So glad that you and Safe in Harm's Way exist.
Thank you. I am too. And I am thankful to be able to be on this journey with you, because the commitment and your career and everything that goes into how you treat survivors, I know that when they're on your podcast, they are received with such love, care, and devotion. And while it might be hard to share their story, you are the most capable, kindness and trauma-fueled person to receive that message and to be able to help them process through it. So thank you for what you do and how you show up in the world too.
Thanks for acknowledging that. Yeah, it means a lot to me when people recognize that. It does. It takes a tremendous amount of empathy and understanding and education. And I want everybody to have the opportunity to take advantage of it, even if it's just in small ways. That's the starting point for what made me start Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, is to not only give victims and survivors that platform to tell their story and start a community with others, but to have that educational access and process. And that's why I do solo episodes every now and then, talking about specific things about being trauma informed and how the memory works and what we can do to help others. And it's why I decided to take you up on that offer of, hey, Dave, do you think maybe we could do a monthly podcast episode together? And I'm like, man, that's such a great idea. I love it.
It's selfish, right? I like hanging out with you.
Well, likewise, for me to have the opportunity to do just even a small part in helping accomplish Carolyn Markel's goals, but also Safe in Harm's Way's goals. I'm privileged to be able to do that. Thank you.
I appreciate it, and your effort and the investment that you make each month by doing this. And I know our conversations, you've mentioned it before with the feedback you get. I have a list, a Spotify playlist that I put on a lot of our social medias, which houses the majority, not all, but most of every podcast I've done consistently. The one that people call out most is the first one you and I did together.
Yeah, episode 19.
People refer to. The thing that helps them is hearing they're not alone. We talked in there a lot about what that looks like and feels like in your body. I've gotten even some well-meaning. These people are well-meaning when they say, you know, the work you do is amazing. I think the work you do is more impactful when you stay in the discussions of the possibility and the discussions of healing. When you get dark and nitty gritty about what healing looks like, I think you pull yourself down back into an abyss, and you also could pull other people back down into an abyss. I said, let me be clear. There's always going to be an abyss. You can have 300 stellar days in a row, and you may need an entire weekend of naps right after that. If we don't talk about those moments, then people think they're doing it wrong. Then people start to get into that lane of, oh my gosh, I'm doing this healing thing all wrong. What's wrong with me? I'm feeling it this too. No, actually, that's what healing looks like. Healing isn't linear. It's highs, it's lows. It's a plummet to the depths of I can't get off the couch. And then the next day, I'm going to sit in the sun, put my feet in the grass, and drink a lot of ice water, and the world's going to feel fine.
Absolutely.
But if we don't talk about those abyss moments, then people go back into silence and shame and think they're doing it wrong, and they are not.
That's right.
We have to talk about the abyss moments so people can go, oh, this is an abyss moment. Okay, I'm still doing healing right. I'm having a bad day. Yeah.
I describe it as a horrific roller coaster ride and a fantastic roller coaster ride. Because sometimes on a roller coaster, you're scared out of your mind and you don't want to be on that roller coaster. And other times you've got your hands up in the air and you're screaming at the top of your lungs with a huge smile on your face. And you feel the successes that come through the healing process. But you're absolutely right. Those abysses are there. And I love that you were so open and honest and transparent. And we talked about how important that is to you.
I'm excellent at telling my story because it's what we hang our hat on: confidence, patience, and the truth as part of the healing process. Speak the truth. Speak the truth. March is always a difficult month for me because it's when I know of one particularly egregious incident when I know I was drugged and sexually assaulted. I know this one, right? I've got evidence of it. There's others I have evidence of, but this was a significant one because of the parties that were involved, one of his coworkers. And it's also the month in which I discovered what he was doing and the month in which I planned my escape. So a couple weeks ago on a Sunday, you and I were supposed to have done a podcast together.
Yeah.
And I was like, Dave, my body's processing something. Don't know what it is. I'm just going to let it do its thing. Now, early on in my healing practice, I could recognize that oftentimes my body remembered dates before my brain did. And you talk to other survivors and it's the same thing. They're like, oh, son of a bitch, it was on this day, right? So one of those things. The beautiful thing of my own healing journey on this particular front is I no longer fight my body on those days. I don't say we're plowing through this, we're put it aside, we're healed from this, we're done. I also no longer look through date books and diaries to figure out, well, okay, what would have happened on or around this date? That's going down a rabbit hole that I just don't care to do because I know my body's going to tell me. Full faith in my body. So Sunday was a day I just stayed quiet. I took naps all day. I thought, surely I'm not going to sleep tonight because I've been napping all day. I slept 10 hours that night. Turns out your body's got to work hard to process things. The next day I had an appointment for a facial. And I called my facial gal. I said, Danielle, I don't know what my body's processing, but it's working through something. When I come in today, if I'm quiet, just need you to know that my body's processing something. And also, if I start to cry, I need you to know I'm safe. I'm not going to stop the tears. My body is letting loose and processing things of which I am not aware of. And I'm going to be so thankful. I walked in, Danielle had the most beautiful playlist on. She had turned the heater on the bed. She had my favorite blankets. She gave me the whole 9 yards, way more than I signed up for that day that she gave me the special treatment of. And we didn't talk once. The next day, I'm in a meeting talking with a trusted friend and advisor. She's helping me on some project work at Safe and Harm's Way. And I am in the middle of a conversation with Kelly. I'm talking to her. And my brain at the same time says it's March 12th. That's the day of the Radiohead concert. That's the day of what you know happened to you with him and his coworker. That's the day today, March 12th, Radiohead Day. As I'm speaking to Kelly.
About something not even related to that.
Not even related.
And boom, intrusion.
There we are. And so I just said, I need to pause for a second. I said, I don't want to say it right now. I'm just having a moment. We finished up our meeting. I started to drive home, had to pull over and throw up, had to pray the rest of the way home because I was livid and sad and thought, I think I might pass out. So I'm just praying to get home. I do. Took a nap. The day started to get better. When I fought my body and its reaction, that would have lasted weeks back in my early healing journey. Plowing through. I'm just going to push that aside and I'm going to plow through because I got things to do. Would have been sick. I didn't. I just kept saying, and I've done this so often in the past couple of years, thanks to my body for working out what it needs to work out. I tell the people around me, because right now I've built a complex, intertwined, incredible human network that I can say, I'm okay. I may have tears, and they are not going to question it, and they're not going to judge me, and they're going to say, what can I do to take care of you? Hasn't always been that way, but I've walked away from the people, again, who didn't make me feel good. So honoring my body, giving gratitude to my brain allows my body to process it in its time and leave my body much quicker than it ever has before. So if anyone's listening to this in their own healing journey, keep doing the hard work of healing. Keep walking away from people who don't value you or your story. And that's hard. I don't say that in any kind of I'm skipping jump rope, happy to do it. No, it hurts to walk away from some people who you have historically loved your whole life. Family, friends. The best people take their place when you honor your body. And all of a sudden you start going, oh, so this is what good friendship feels like. Oh, so this is what good family feels like. Oh, I don't have to have triggers or think it's just me, because it's not. Keep doing that hard work and quit fighting your body when it's trying to tell you something. Quit plowing through. Lean in and think, you know what? Thank you, body, for processing right now. Thank you. I'm listening to you. And thank you for all those times you carried me through the worst things in my life, some of which I didn't know at all were happening to me. And you took care of me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that entire story and what it was all about. Again, your transparency, your knowledge base of being trauma informed and recognizing what was going on. I just know this is touching and healing to other listeners. Everything you just said is so critically important because it is all so trauma informed based. And you're absolutely right. It's amazing how our brains can make our cognitive mind realize things. And sometimes it doesn't mesh right away. Sometimes we don't recognize right away what our body is doing and why it's doing it. You had obviously been through a lot of healing by the time that happened because you took the time to recognize that. Some people are at the point in their healing journey that they don't understand and they do try and fight it. Or if they do give in, they may be incapacitated for hours, days, maybe weeks, and not understand why, but they're still letting their body do what their body needs to do in terms of how their brain is trying to communicate with them. And I think that is so critically important, all that you said and the education that you just imparted with all of us. It's so needed and so necessary.
And you just brought up something great, Dave, which was there could be moments in a healing journey where what you are processing devastates you. You're not doing it wrong. You're not doing it wrong. If we don't keep healing at the same time that we have those really bad days, that's where those really bad days turn ugly, because it's silence and shame that sneaks in. Mm-hmm. And it's a 3 a.m. voice that says, how dare you think you can heal from this? Who do you think you are? We tell our own selves the worst stories. So we have to keep talking about it, and we have to honor our body and say thank you. There are some days I say thank you because I got up and brushed my teeth. I mean, at the height of things when they were really bad, you know what I did today? I got up and brushed my teeth. I may not have showered since last Thursday, and I'm still in my pajamas, but damn it, I brushed my teeth today. And that's a win.
Absolutely. The healing process takes time. The healing process isn't easy. The healing process involves working through the hardest issues and parts of our assault and our memories and our traumas, and getting to the other side of working through those. You just gave some amazing advice and education to us. I appreciate you. It's why I want you on this podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
And I'm looking forward to next month when we do another episode.
Me too. Thanks for your time and investment in me. Thanks for the time and investment you make in Safe and Harm's Way. Appreciate you.
Take care of yourself. Talk to you later.
You too. Bye.
Bye. That does it for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SASS podcast. I want to pass on my sincere appreciation to Carolyn Markel for joining me again this month and for the wealth of information and support she brings to my listeners. Be sure to stay tuned for next month's episode with Carolyn. You won't want to miss her insights and updates from safeinharmsway.org. And please tune in for next week's episode of SASS as I again get back to our regular format. You'll hear from a survivor of sexual assault and rape, Ray Epstein. You don't want to miss Ray's story of horrific manipulation and threats, which led to her sexual assault and subsequent rape. Her experience led her to prevention activism against rape and sexual assault, and her founding of an organization at Temple University, Student Activists Against Sexual Assault. In the meantime, if you are a victim or survivor of rape, sexual assault, or any other form of interpersonal violence and need help staying safe and moving forward in your survival journey, contact safeinharmsway.org. They are there for you and will help you find the resources you need to help obtain the justice you deserve. Find them at www.safeinharmsway.org. Also, if you are a victim or survivor of rape or sexual assault and you feel you're ready to tell your story in order to help yourself on your own healing journey or want to help others with theirs, email me at davemarkel@gmail.com. That's DAVEMARKEL@gmail.com, and we'll talk about the possibility of you being a guest on this show. Thank you again for listening to Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SASS podcast. Please subscribe, give the show a rating, and tell others how we're here to help victims and survivors find justice. And finally, don't forget to start by believing, because we all know someone whose life has been affected by rape or sexual assault. We'll see you next week.